The skies above Washington, D.C. were ripped apart. A deafening roar, a flash of metal, and then silence. A commercial airliner filled with innocent souls lay shattered on the outskirts of the nation's capital. The first such tragedy in nearly 2 decades, it sent shockwaves across the country, a grim reminder of life's fragility and the ever-present potential for disaster. As smoke billowed from the wreckage and first responders rushed to the scene, a nation held its breath, desperate for answers, for solace, for leadership in the face of unimaginable loss. But what they received from the Oval Office was not comfort, not unity, but a familiar refrain, the discordant notes of blame and division. Even before the dust had settled, even before the victims could be identified, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, took to his pulpit, the digital soapbox of social media, to cast blame. His targets? Democrats and their supposed embrace of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, or DEI as he so often derided it. With the wreckage still smoldering, with families still reeling from the news, the president chose not to console, not to unify, but to divide. His words, laced with venom and devoid of empathy, landed like salt in the wounds of a grieving nation. Trump's accusations, however, rang hollow, for they conveniently ignored the actions of his own administration in the days leading up to the crash. The administration's decisions were not just controversial, they were seen by many as reckless and ill-advised. Just 1 week prior, in a series of moves that sent shockwaves through the aviation industry, Trump, alongside his newly appointed Secretary of Transportation, Elon Musk, had embarked on a systematic dismantling of aviation safety protocols and personnel. This was a drastic shift from the established norms that had governed the industry for decades. On January 20, 2025, the respected head of the Federal Aviation Administration was unceremoniously ousted, a move that stunned many within the agency and beyond. This decision was seen as a clear signal of the administration's intent to overhaul the FAA's leadership, replaced with a loyalist whose qualifications were overshadowed by his unwavering fealty to the president. This new appointee lacked the experience and expertise traditionally required for such a critical role, raising concerns about the future of aviation safety. The very next day, a federal hiring freeze went into effect, further exacerbating the situation. This freeze halted the recruitment and training of new personnel, leaving many positions within the FAA vacant and critical functions understaffed, crippling the FAA's ability to recruit and train desperately needed air traffic controllers. The impact was immediate and severe, with existing staff stretched thin and struggling to maintain the high standards of safety and efficiency. And on January 22, in a move widely condemned by aviation experts, Trump proudly announced the end of all DEI programs within the FAA, claiming they were weakening the agency. This decision was met with widespread criticism and protests, as many believed these programs were essential for fostering a diverse and inclusive workforce. Claiming they were weakening the agency, the cumulative effect of these actions was a demoralized workforce, a leadership in disarray, and an aviation industry on the brink of crisis. The consequences of this timeline of recklessness were becoming increasingly apparent, with safety and efficiency hanging in the balance. This is a time for mourning, for unity, for leadership. Yet again, this president has shown himself utterly incapable of fulfilling his role as consoler-in-chief.
Mr. Musk's expertise lies in electric cars and space travel, not in ensuring the safety of our skies. His appointment, driven by cronyism and a blatant disregard for experience, is a slap in the face to the American people.
We've seen this playbook before. Trump and his enablers create a crisis, then point fingers when their actions have disastrous consequences. But we will not be cowed. We will fight for accountability, for justice, for the truth.
What made Trump's blame game all the more audacious was the simple fact that Republicans held complete control of the government. With a Republican majority in both the House and the Senate, and with Trump occupying the White House, there were no Democrats to scapegoat, no convenient foils upon which to pin the blame. The D.C. plane crash, a tragedy of immense proportions, laid bare the dangers of unchecked power, of a political system where one party, drunk on its own majority, could operate with impunity, unaccountable for its actions, no matter how reckless or negligent. Adding fuel to the fire were the actions of Trump's newly appointed Director of National Intelligence, Kash Patel. A fervent loyalist with a history of peddling conspiracy theories, Patel used his position to spread misinformation and deflect blame from the administration. During a contentious Senate hearing, Patel, under oath, made a series of demonstrably false statements about the DC plane crash, claiming, without evidence, that it was the result of sabotage by a foreign power. These lies, blatant and easily disproven, were nonetheless amplified by right-wing media outlets, further muddying the waters and hindering the search for truth and accountability. The DC plane crash and its aftermath highlighted a challenge that had long plagued Democrats: how to effectively counter the relentless onslaught of misinformation and propaganda emanating from the right. This tragic event was not just a moment of crisis, but also a stark reminder of the power of false narratives. The misinformation spread like wildfire, creating confusion and fear among the public. From the death panels of Obamacare, a term coined to instill fear and distrust in the healthcare reforms, to the fabricated scandal surrounding Hunter Biden's laptop, which was used to cast doubt on the integrity of political figures, Republicans had repeatedly shown a willingness to exploit fear, prejudice, and outright falsehoods to advance their agenda. These tactics were not new, but their intensity and frequency had increased, making it harder for the truth to surface. The challenge for Democrats was not a lack of truth on their side, as they had ample evidence and facts to support their policies and positions, but rather the difficulty of breaking through the noise. The media landscape was cluttered with sensationalist headlines and partisan commentary, making it a Herculean task to get a clear and honest message across. Penetrating the echo chambers of right-wing media and reaching voters who had been fed a steady diet of misinformation was a monumental challenge. These echo chambers reinforced existing beliefs and made it difficult for alternative viewpoints to be considered. It was a battle for the very soul of American democracy, a fight to ensure that truth and integrity prevailed over deceit and manipulation, and it was one that Democrats could ill afford to lose. The stakes were incredibly high, and the future of the nation depended on their ability to effectively combat these falsehoods and restore faith in the democratic process. As if the DC plane crash and its political fallout weren't enough, another crisis loomed on the horizon: the economic consequences of Trump's protracted trade war. Tariffs, imposed on goods from China, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, had initially been touted by Trump as a way to protect American jobs and industries. However, the reality was far less rosy. The trade war, far from bringing back manufacturing jobs, had instead driven up costs for consumers, hurt American farmers, and disrupted supply chains. Retaliatory tariffs imposed by other countries had specifically targeted goods produced in red states, a calculated move designed to inflict maximum political pain on Trump's base. The DC plane crash, a tragedy compounded by political opportunism, misinformation, and economic uncertainty, served as a stark reminder of the fragility of American democracy. The crash was not just a physical disaster, but a symbolic one, highlighting the deep-seated issues that plague our society. It was a moment that called for introspection and a re-evaluation of our values and priorities. In an era of hyper-partisanship, social media echo chambers, and a blatant disregard for truth, the very foundations of American society seem to be crumbling. The spread of misinformation and the polarization of public opinion have created an environment where facts are often overshadowed by sensationalism and rhetoric. This has led to a breakdown in civil discourse and a weakening of the democratic process. The path forward was fraught with peril, but amidst the darkness, there were glimmers of hope. These glimmers came in the form of individuals and groups who refused to be silenced, who stood up for what they believed in, and who worked tirelessly to bring about positive change. Their efforts, though often overshadowed by the chaos, were a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. The resilience of the American spirit, the ability to come together in times of crisis, and the unwavering belief in the principles of freedom and justice have always been the bedrock of our nation. This resilience was evident in the countless acts of kindness, solidarity, and bravery that emerged in the wake of the tragedy. The unwavering dedication of journalists and truth-tellers, who risked their lives to bring us the facts, cannot be overstated. In an age where the truth is often under attack, their role is more critical than ever. They serve as the watchdogs of our democracy, holding those in power accountable and ensuring that the public remains informed. And the growing chorus of voices demanding accountability offered a beacon of light in these uncertain times. These voices, coming from all walks of life, represent the collective will of the people to see justice served and to ensure that such tragedies do not happen again. They remind us that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of our nation. The fight for truth, for justice, for a more perfect union, would be long and arduous, but it was a fight worth waging. History has shown us that progress is never easy, but it is always possible. The sacrifices made by those who came before us serve as a reminder of what can be achieved when we stand together. For the future of American democracy hung in the balance. The choices we make today will determine the kind of nation we leave for future generations. It is a responsibility that we must all take seriously, for the sake of our children and for the sake of our democracy.